And the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. You know, if you want to understand that, which I would recommend, you could read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. It's a great novel. I think it might be the greatest novel ever written, because I haven't read every novel. But in my experience, it's the greatest novel. And it is exactly this. It says what happens psychologically if you commit the ultimate crime. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. There's no psychologist like Dostoevsky. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this is that, I think the punishment that God lays on Cain it's like the inevitable consequences of Cain's action. It's something like that. It's like, well, he killed his brother. There's no going back from that, man. Like, good luck forgiving yourself for that, especially if he was an ideal, especially if he was your ideal, because you haven't just killed your brother and, of course, tortured your parents and the rest of your family. You've deprived the community of someone who is upstanding, and you did it for the worst possible motivations. It's like there's no up from there, right? That's as close to hell as you can manage on earth, I would say. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. That too is like, there's also no turning back to God, let's say, after an error like that, because, well, you've done everything you possibly could to spite God, assuming he exists, and the probability that you're going to be able to mend that relationship in your now broken state, when you couldn't mend it to begin with before you did something so terrible, starts to move towards zero. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. That's an interesting thing. I wondered about that for a long time, because you might think, well, why would God take Cain under his wing, so to speak, given what's already happened? And I think it has something to do with the emergence of the idea that it was necessary to prevent tit for tat, revenge slayings. It's something like that, and there's hints of that later in the text, because, it's like, well, I kill your brother, and then you kill two of my brothers, and then I kill your whole family, and then you kill my whole town, and then I kill your whole country, and then we blow up the world. It's like, yeah, that's probably not a very intelligent solution to the initial problem, even though the initial problem, which might be a murder, is not an easy thing to solve. But I think it's something like that. And then the last part of the story is, that's William Blake. So Adam and Eve have discovered their dead son. And Cain has become cognizant, I would say, of what he did and what he is. Right? So it's another entrance into a form of self-consciousness. It's the self-consciousness that Adam and Eve developed was painful enough. They become aware of their own vulnerability and their nakedness, and perhaps even their capacity for evil. But Cain becomes aware of his voluntary engagement with evil itself, and sees that as a crucial human capability. And that's something modern people, it's no wonder we don't take it seriously. Like, I know in the academy and among intellectual circles for decades, the idea of evil has been, it's like, what are you, medieval or something? The whole idea of evil, that's a non-starter as an intellectual starting place, as a topic. And that's something that I've just been unable to understand, because I cannot understand how you could possibly have more than a cursory knowledge of the history of the 20th century, much less a deep knowledge of the history of the 20th century, and to walk away with any other conclusion than, well, good might not exist, but evil, hey, the evidence for that is so overwhelming that only willful blindness could possibly explain denying in its existence. And that was actually a useful discovery for me, because I also concluded, perhaps, that if it was true evil existed, then it was true by inference that its opposite existed. Because the opposite of evil, let's say the evil of the concentration camp, let's say, or we could get more specific about it, we could say there's this one thing that used to happen in Auschwitz where they would take people off the incoming trains, those who lived, that weren't stacked around the outside of the train cars, and froze to death because it was too cold. Those who only had to be stuck in the middle where it was warm enough so that maybe the old people died because they suffocated, but at least some of them were alive when they made it to Auschwitz, and then they took those poor people out. And one of the tricks that the guards used to play on them was to have the newly arrived prisoners hoist like 100-pound sacks of wet salt and carry them from one side of the compound. And these compounds were big. This was a city. It wasn't like a gymnasium. It was like a city. There were tens of thousands of people there. They'd have them carry the sack of wet salt from one side of the compound to the other and then back, right? And that was to make a mockery out of the notion that work would set you free. It's like, no, you work here, but there's nothing productive about it. The whole point, it's exactly the opposite of sacrifice in some sense. It's we're going to make you act out working, but all it will do is speed your demise. And maybe we can decorate it up a little bit, because not only will it speed up your demise, it will do it in a very painful way, while simultaneously increasing the probability that other people's demises will be painful and sped up. It's a work of art, that's for sure. And to know about that sort of thing and not regard it as evil means, well, you can figure out what it means for yourself.